just after sunset in Oakland, California. One of those evenings when the city hums softly under orange skies and headlights dance on wet pavement. In a small neighborhood near 73rd Avenue, laughter spilled from a house where family and friends gathered. Music low, spirits high. Among them was LaKeitha Humphrey, or Keke, as everyone called her, radiant, warm, always the one to turn any heavy moment light again. She was the kind of woman who carried joy in her voice and purpose in her heart. That night, she was planning for the week ahead. Her kids, her business, her next move. There was so much she wanted to do, so much she still had to say. But within hours, that laughter fell silent. Neighbors would later describe hearing something they couldn't quite make sense of, a single sound that cut through the quiet. And then nothing. The next morning, the headlines would tell a story that didn't seem real to anyone who loved her. LaKeitha Humphrey gone. When people first heard, disbelief spread faster than the news itself. Not Keke. Not the one who was always lifting others up. Not the mother of 8 who worked tirelessly to give her family the kind of life she never had. Friends flooded social media with memories, photos of her smile, her voice messages, her kindness. And beneath every post was the same haunting question. How could this happen? To the world, she was another name in another city's tragedy. But to those who knew her, LaKeitha wasn't a statistic. She was a heartbeat, a story, a promise that should have lasted a lifetime. As the hours passed, the truth began to emerge. This wasn't random. It wasn't a robbery gone wrong or a chance encounter. The danger had been close. Too close. The man she trusted, the one who once vowed to love and protect her, had a darkness that few truly understood. A past marked by violence and a temper that would eventually destroy everything in its path. What happened that night wasn't just the loss of one woman. It was the unraveling of an entire family, the breaking of a bond that once looked unbreakable. And now, her children, her mother, and her friends are left with the echoes, trying to piece together why the person who promised forever became the one who took it all away. This is not just a story about violence. It's about warning signs ignored, about strength that came too late, and about the voices that must never again be silenced. This is the story of LaKeitha Humphrey, a woman who loved deeply, lived brightly, and trusted too much. Stay with us, because before the story ends, you'll see how love can turn into something darker, and how silence can cost everything. Welcome to LAT True Crime Stories. I am your host. Today we are breaking down one of the most twisted cases you've ever seen. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, and leave your comment to tell us where you're watching from. Let's build this community together. Now let's get into it. Before the headlines, before the heartbreak, there was Keke, a woman whose laughter could fill a room before she even walked into it. Born and raised in Oakland, California, LaKeitha Humphrey grew up surrounded by community, family, cousins, church friends, neighbors who watched out for one another. She was the kind of person who carried sunshine wherever she went, even in a city that sometimes felt weighed down by hardship. Her mother described her as the glue, the one who made birthdays special, who checked on everyone, who turned ordinary days into something worth remembering. As she got older, LaKeitha became known for her resilience. Life hadn't been easy. She had faced moments that could have broken her, but instead, they shaped her into someone stronger. She worked hard, often juggling multiple jobs while raising her children, determined to give them the stability she never fully had. To her kids, she was more than a mom. She was their best friend, their biggest cheerleader, their constant. She cooked big family dinners, hosted game nights, and never missed a chance to tell her children that they were loved, no matter what. But behind that glow of strength was a woman who wanted something that everyone dreams of: peace, partnership, and love. That's when she met Troy, a man who at first seemed like the missing piece in her story. He wasn't perfect, she knew that, but he could be charming, attentive, and gentle when he wanted to be. They had shared laughs, long talks, and a connection that grew quickly. To LaKeitha, it felt like maybe, just maybe, after all the storms she'd faced, she had finally found her calm. Friends said she smiled differently when she talked about him. She wanted to believe he was ready to build something stable, something real. But as time passed, That warmth began to fade. Small arguments became long nights. Conversations that once felt loving now turned sharp and unpredictable. He could be jealous, controlling, and angry over things that didn't make sense. Still, like so many who love deeply, LaKeitha believed she could fix it, that he could change, that patience and love would be enough. Her friends noticed the signs first. The way she grew quieter about her relationship. The way her eyes darted away when they asked if she was okay. There were moments when she'd pull back, saying things like, "He's just going through something." Or, "I don't want to make it worse." She didn't want pity. She wanted peace. And that's the hardest part for those who loved her, because they saw the spark dimming, but they couldn't force her to leave. Not yet. Not when she still believed that love could heal. By early 2024, she was focusing more on herself again, rebuilding, working, spending more time with family. Her friends said she seemed lighter, like she was finally ready to move forward and stop looking back. She was talking about goals, about traveling, about starting fresh. But the man she had once cared for wasn't ready to let her go. He had been watching her, still calling, still trying to pull her back in. And when she stopped answering, that's when the tension began to rise. The weeks before her death were filled with subtle signs, messages that felt off, visits that came uninvited, small warnings that something wasn't right. But LaKeitha, ever the optimist, tried to keep things calm. She didn't want drama. She didn't want fear to control her life. Then came that night. On March 10th, 2024, LaKeitha was out, laughing with friends, feeling free, unaware that danger was only a few blocks away. As she made her way home, everything seemed normal. Her phone showed messages to her kids. Her last text was simple, reassuring, like any other evening. But within hours, everything changed. Police received reports of an incident in East Oakland, near 73rd Avenue and Holly Street. When they arrived, they found her, lifeless inside her car. The news hit the community like a storm. Her family rushed to the scene in disbelief. Neighbors stood outside, whispering, praying it wasn't her. But it was. The woman who had brought light to so many lives was gone, taken in an act of senseless violence that shattered everyone who knew her. In that moment, the entire neighborhood fell silent. How could this happen? How could someone who had survived so much, who had worked so hard to build something better, end up like this? Her mother, standing in tears, said it best. She didn't deserve this. Nobody deserves this. As detectives began their investigation, one name surfaced almost immediately. The man she had once loved. The one she had tried to move on from. People began to remember things, warnings, moments, words that now carried new meaning. It wasn't random. It wasn't chance. Something darker had been brewing all along. And soon, it would all come to light. The morning after LaKeitha's death, the sun rose over Oakland, but for her family, it might as well have stayed dark. Her mother sat by the window, waiting for a call that would never come. Her children were confused, asking questions no one was ready to answer. The news spread fast, social media posts filled with disbelief and heartbreak. "Not Keke," one post read. "She was just here last night." Another said, "She was trying to get her life together. She didn't deserve this." At first, police treated it as a possible random act of violence. After all, Oakland had seen its share of tragedies. But as they began piecing together the details, things didn't quite add up. Her car hadn't been stolen. Her phone and purse were still inside. Nothing was missing, except her life. Detectives started looking into her recent communications, searching through her phone, call logs, and social media. What they found painted a clearer, more chilling picture. There were repeated calls and messages from one person, Troy, the ex-boyfriend. Messages that started out as attempts to reconcile, then turned angry and obsessive when she didn't respond. Some were pleading, "Please just talk to me." Others were darker. "If I can't have you, nobody will." It was a pattern investigators had seen before, a familiar and devastating cycle of control and violence. Friends confirmed what the phone records already hinted at. LaKeitha had been trying to distance herself from him for months. She wanted peace. She wanted to focus on her children. But Troy refused to accept it. One friend recalled, "She told me he'd been showing up where she worked. She was scared, but she didn't want to get the police involved. She said she could handle it. It was the kind of strength so many women carry. The belief that things will calm down, that walking away quietly will keep everyone safe. But in this case, that silence only gave him time to plan. As detectives continued their investigation, surveillance footage from nearby cameras began to tell the rest of the story. Footage showed a vehicle matching Troy's car driving near the area shortly before LaKeitha was found. Witnesses came forward saying they saw a man arguing with her that night, a heated confrontation that ended in chaos. It was enough for police to issue a warrant. When they finally located him, he didn't resist. He seemed almost calm, detached. One detective later said, "It was like he had already made peace with what he did. There was no remorse." The news of his arrest sent shockwaves through the community. People who knew both of them were torn, stunned that someone who once claimed to love her could be capable of something so cruel. For her family, it wasn't just grief. It was disbelief mixed with guilt. Her mother asked over and over, "Why didn't I see it coming? Why didn't she tell me?" Her friends blamed themselves too, replaying every conversation, every warning sign. The deeper the investigation went, the more painful the truth became. This wasn't a moment of rage. It was a deliberate act born out of obsession and control. Troy had been spiraling for weeks before that night. He had lost his job, had no stable place to stay, and was consumed by the idea that LaKeitha had moved on. He told a friend that she had disrespected him, that she was acting like she didn't care. In reality, all she wanted was distance, a chance to breathe, to focus on her kids and her own healing. But to him, her independence felt like rejection, and rejection turned into rage. When investigators presented the evidence, text messages, witness statements, and forensic details from the scene, the story became painfully clear. He had waited for her that night. He followed her, and when she tried to walk away one final time, he made sure she couldn't. As the case moved toward trial, the community rallied around her family. Candlelight vigils were held across Oakland, people holding photos of LaKeitha, sharing memories of her laughter, her kindness, her light. Her cousin stood at one vigil and said, "We're not going to let her name fade away. She wasn't just another statistic. She was our Keke, and she deserved to grow old, to see her kids grow up." Meanwhile, inside the courtroom, the man accused of taking her life sat silently, showing little emotion as evidence was read aloud. Her family attended every hearing, her mother sitting in the same seat, clutching a photo of her daughter in happier times. Her children were kept away from most of it, too young to understand why everyone around them was breaking. As the trial progressed, one question lingered in every heart: why? Why did love turn into this? Why do so many stories end the same way, with a woman trying to leave and a man refusing to let go? Each piece of evidence added to the heartbreak. The more truth emerged, the harder it was to comprehend. For those who knew her, the hardest part wasn't just losing LaKeitha. It was knowing she had been so close to freedom. She was finally rebuilding, finally smiling again. She had made plans. She had hope. And in one violent moment, all of it was stolen. By the time the trial neared its end, the emotional toll had reached everyone: the family, the community, even the investigators who had to relive every detail of that night. For them, this wasn't just another case. It was a reminder of how fragile life can be, how quickly love can turn into something unrecognizable when control takes over. But justice, in whatever form it came, wouldn't erase the loss. And as the courtroom prepared for its final chapter, one thing was certain: Oakland would never forget the name LaKeitha Humphrey. The courthouse in downtown Oakland was quiet that morning. Reporters gathered outside, cameras flashing as family members slowly walked up the steps. The same steps LaKeitha once climbed for happier reasons, never imagining this would one day be her final story. Inside, the air was heavy. Every seat was filled: family, friends, neighbors, and strangers who came simply because they had heard her story and wanted to show support. At the defense table sat Troy, dressed in a wrinkled gray suit. His eyes were empty, staring forward. There was no apology, no emotion, just a blank stillness that made the pain in the room even sharper. When the prosecution began, they laid out every painful detail: the surveillance footage showing his car trailing hers, the texts that went from sweet to threatening, the desperate last moments before she lost her life. Each piece of evidence was another wound reopened. As the photos flashed on the courtroom screen, her mother quietly sobbed, clutching a locket that held her daughter's picture. Her family sat in silence, reliving the nightmare they'd been trapped in since that night. When the time came for victim impact statements, the room shifted from quiet sorrow to trembling rage and heartbreak. Her mother stood first. Her voice shook as she said, "You took away my baby. You took away a mother, a sister, a friend. You left her children asking every night why their mommy isn't coming home. I hope you know what you've done. I hope it stays with you every single day you breathe." Her cousin followed, speaking through tears. She wasn't just another name. She had dreams. She had love in her heart for everyone. And you destroyed that because you couldn't stand to see her happy without you. Even the judge paused more than once, allowing the family to compose themselves before continuing. When it was finally time for the defense to speak, Troy's attorney said he acted in a moment of passion, a phrase that drew gasps and whispers from the gallery. But there was no passion in what happened that night. Only possession, only control. The prosecutor's closing argument cut through the silence like a blade. "This wasn't love," she said. "This was ownership. And when she dared to take her freedom back, he took her life." When the jury returned after hours of deliberation, the courtroom froze. The foreperson stood and read the verdict, guilty on all counts. A wave of relief and sorrow swept through the room at once. Her mother collapsed into her sister's arms, whispering, "We did it, baby. We got justice for you." But justice, as everyone there understood, was only a word. It couldn't bring her back. It couldn't fill the empty chair at family dinners or the silence in her children's rooms. In the weeks that followed, the community honored her memory. Murals of her smiling face appeared across Oakland. Candlelight vigils turned into calls for change. Conversations about the quiet epidemic of domestic violence that takes too many lives each year. Her family created a foundation in her name, Keke's Light, dedicated to helping women in abusive relationships find safety before it's too late. Her mother often said, "If we can save even one woman, then my baby's story won't be in vain." Local organizations began collaborating with the foundation, spreading awareness and providing resources for victims afraid to speak out. For them, LaKeitha's story wasn't just tragedy. It was a warning and a spark for something better. Reporters later asked her sister what she wanted people to remember about her. She said softly, her laughter, the way she made people feel safe, the way she never gave up on anyone, even the one who hurt her. Years from now, people will still talk about that night, about the woman who only wanted peace, about the family who turned pain into purpose, about the children who will grow up hearing that their mother's love was stronger than the violence that tried to erase it. And maybe, through her story, someone else will recognize the signs. Someone will reach out, get help, or leave before it's too late. Because that's the heartbreaking truth. LaKeitha's story isn't rare. It's one of countless others. Women who loved deeply, believed in change, and paid the ultimate price for someone else's obsession. But by remembering her, by saying her name, we make sure her story doesn't disappear into silence. If you're watching this and you've ever felt trapped in a relationship that doesn't feel safe, please reach out. There is help. There are people who will listen, who will protect you, and who want you to live. LaKeitha Humphrey should still be here, laughing, loving, and living her life freely. Her story reminds us that love should never hurt, and that silence can be the most dangerous weapon of all. So if this story moved you, share it. Let her name be known. Let her legacy be the reason someone else finds the strength to walk away. Because justice isn't only found in courtrooms. It's found in the lives we save by telling the truth.